Hello, and welcome to the TechStack Podcast, brought to you by the NextGen Planners Podcast. If you're curious about how technology is shaking up the world of financial planning, you're in the right place. Every week, we sit down with experts, thinkers, and those who are shaking up this space to chat about the latest and greatest in financial planning technology. From cool tools to big picture trends, we cover it all. Whether you're a financial planner, a tech geek, or just someone who likes to stay ahead of the game, join us for some interesting conversations and takeaways. This is where financial planning meets the future. Welcome to the TechStack Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the NextGen Planners TechStack Podcast. My name is Francois du Toit, and I'm one of your hosts for this. I am your only host for this episode, but also one of the hosts for the TechStack Podcast. And I'm very excited for our episode today, as I'm joined by the amazing Charlotte Kemp. Charlotte, warm welcome to the TechStack Podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to continuing our interesting conversations about this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I do want to start off with and just ask you first, like the Futures Alchemist. Please explain that to me. What does that mean and what does that entail?
All right. So I'll explain a moment about being a futurist to start with. I'm a professional futurist. I'm a member of the Association of Professional Futurists. I've studied, I've written books about it. My position is that we are all natural futurists, and especially in this space where we're talking about, financial planning and wealth creation and everything about the future of money for our clients. So everyone listening, you are also futurists along with anything else you have. But when I come with the kind of branding or concept of Futures Alchemist, it's to look at a different way of having futures conversations. So alchemy, immediately we're going to think about turning lead into gold. But the ancient alchemists were actually pursuing something deeper than that. Obviously, there was a physical lead to gold. How do you turn one element into something else? But there was also the spiritual element. How do we become better people? How do we take everything we know and learn? How do we collaborate and create something that is kind of transcendent of who we are? So when I talk to an organization as a futures alchemist, my idea is I'm bringing elements to the conversation, you are bringing elements to the conversation, and we do a little bit of science, a little bit of magic, a lot of experimentation, and we come up with something new that is transcendent that will serve us better into the future. So I really enjoy kind of playing with that alchemy concept, because it just means that we're working together to co-create something amazing for the future.
I absolutely love that. That's amazing. And that's one of the things about being a futurist, right? A lot of this is what if this, what if that, and where do we think things are going? But the exciting part is that keeps on changing as things then come to fruition. I was having a conversation with somebody last night around I wonder what it was, the things that was predicted in 2007, in the late 80s, in the middle 90s. How many of those things have actually come true, and how many of those things was a thing that we thought was going to happen and then just never did. So, it's a very interesting sort of conversation. And just maybe with people listening at the moment, or maybe watching us, this is a technology podcast. So what has this got to do with it? And it's a very important aspect for me. And that's something called mindset, right? And I know this is an important topic for you as well, Charlotte, because, our mindset about or around everything is so critically important. And if we look at the rate of change at the moment with all the technology advancements, artificial intelligence, everything and the pace at which it's happening. So I'm keen to sort of just maybe hear from you a little bit around the role of mindset and sort of your views around that before we even get into talking about where we think things are going.
You talked about technology and how it is, how we kind of relate it to futures thinking. And one of the models we start with, which is a very common model, is that of PESTLE. So these are the things that drive change into the future. And it's politics, economics, social issues, legislation, technology, and the environment. So obviously, if something happens in the environment, like we have a drought or we have an earthquake, something has happened, we've got to deal with it. And when more and more of those things happen, we have to respond. So a lot of these things kind of push us into the future. We have to make responses. Technology is something that pulls us into the future, because there are some great guys who started in their mom's garages and created new technology that we never knew about before and now we cannot live without. And that technology pulls us into the future because it's doing things better, faster, more efficiently than ever before. So that technology really pulls us forward. But it doesn't matter what the technology is, what the politics is, what the opportunities are, any kind of utopian society we might, paint in the future. We cannot experience or embrace any of that if our mindset is wrong. And it's really difficult for us to adjust our mindset. So our minds are kind of linear and local. We kind of know the people around us in our hometown. We anticipate things kind of progressing on a steady basis. But our experience of the world is actually exponential. The change in society and technology and things that are happening, it's exponential. It's off the chart. The pace of change, the pace of technologies, it's off the chart. It's just absolutely exponential. And so some people love that. They thrive. They go, oh, this is so exciting. What can we do next? How can we do more? How can we have more clients, produce better value, create more wealth? And other people, and certainly some of our clients, are going, oh, that's too much. I just want the things simple. I want to be able to kind of put my hands on something. I need to understand and wrap my head around something. Otherwise, I don't want to go there. And that's really difficult for some people whose mindsets are a little bit more stuck and maybe need a bit of coaching to make some progress forward. But yeah, so mindset always starts. We have a very simple model that says, if we're moving into the future, at the bottom of the pyramid is mindset. Once we have a futures-focused mindset, we can look at all the tools that are available, all the technologies, all the models. And once we got that tool set worked out, then we develop skill. And then we are, really creating something of value for the people that we're working with.
Yeah, and I guess, one of my big questions is if you think about futurist thinking or, the whole, this whole futuristic thing it's a profession, right? I mean, you studied to be able to think this way and to go and look for different things that we need to consider in the future. But, from a financial planner or financial advisor point of view, how does this apply to them, if at all? Why do they need to, how does future thinking impact on them?
Yeah. I remember one of the first times I ever sat with a real financial advisor, really early in my career, with my first husband's financial advisor that had been referred to us by his father. And we sat there and he was talking, my husband back then was talking about his career trajectory, and he's a specialist attorney. And when people, look at that, we know what that kind of salary income could be like. And at some point, the financial advisor is showing us figures that look like telephone numbers. And it was just, too much for us to wrap our heads around. This is impossible. The world can't, money can't be like that. This is more than we could imagine. How would we ever create that kind of value or wealth? And I think that's kind of like the first part that a financial advisor needs to do, is to help the client be able to look forward and be able to create a scenario for what is coming. So, for example, in futures thinking, one of our tools is scenario planning. And there's various ways to create different scenarios, but kind of a rule of thumb is to say, we've got a normal kind of plan, a business plan, a financial plan, and that's kind of like the middle of the road. If things keep going nicely, they're going to go in that direction. Then we have a brilliant utopian, the world is going to be fantastic, I'm going to earn so much money plan. And then how are we going to work on that? And that's the space where we are creating wealth. We're creating a nest egg for retirement that makes retirement enjoyable. We're creating value that can be handed on to future generations. The dystopian worst case scenario is, what if we are retrenched or our business doesn't work? What if there are unexpected financial requirements that we have to deal with? What happens if something happens to our health and we aren't able to work? What happens when we die with the people who are left behind? And that's a dystopian. It's a negative scenario. And not everybody wants to talk about that. Not everyone wants to have the conversation about, having the right kind of cover to take care of people who are left behind if we die. And a financial advisor who can take their clients through that conversation, they are futurists. They are helping the client to see something. They're painting a picture of the future. And we can give it a name. We can talk about like the wealth creation path or the, risk aversion path, but we can give it a name. We can make it a little bit more tangible. We're coaching the client to be able to anticipate the future and then take actions today that are not hugely difficult actions to take, an investment here, insurance there, put the right things in place, make sure the documents are right. And these small actions now have such an incredible impact in the future. And that's why we want to do it, because if we don't take those actions, when something happens in the future, we are unprepared and we can't travel back in time to fix it. And we don't have enough time now at a later stage in our life to address that. So, all of our financial advisors are actually futurists, helping their clients to paint scenarios about the future and anticipate that future properly.
And how does this impact on decision making? I guess there's clients that are very good at making decisions, and maybe there are many who are not, or they just can't make those decisions, or when they make those decisions, they probably don't stick to it. But does this have any impact on that?
Yes, I think so. First of all, part of the reason we struggle with decision making is that the world has become so complex. There are so many options, so many ways of doing anything, and so many options when it comes to our financial lives. There are all the different technologies, there are all the different platforms. Every single one has an app on our phone, and then we get messages from other parts of the world. So we could actually be investing in a unit trust somewhere else in the world. There's all these options, and then there are all the new technologies that we cannot get our brains around, like blockchain or cryptocurrency and big data and analytics and algorithms. And if we can't understand that and we're not helped through that, then we can't make good decisions. We retreat. We kind of like fall back to a coping mechanism of just trying to cope with what is happening. And unfortunately, many of those coping mechanisms are very negative. So we will literally stop engaging, stop anticipating the future because it's too much, or we will kind of play the victim, I can't do this because I've got all these other burdens and responsibilities and I've got nothing left and I've got no extra money to invest. We'll start blaming and saying, other people should have taken care of my retirement, or even blaming the financial advisor, like you should have told me, you should have explained these things. So that is a natural reaction for a human to take when they're facing this kind of pace and complexity of the modern world. And if our financial advisors realize that, first of all, a savvy client, but any client has access to all this information, but we can't process it the way that you can because you have the experience, you are kind of immersed in this field. So then the financial advisor becomes a coach to help the client to understand what they want to do, to be able to articulate their goals, and then to find appropriate ways of doing, kind of achieving those goals. And almost the financial advisor needs to give the client permission to ignore a whole lot of information that isn't relevant. There's too much information for us. We can't cope with it. So how are we going to go forward and make those good decisions? Some people can kind of embrace a strategy. They can see what they want, but to make the decision in the here and now is really difficult. So there's a little bit of kind of coaching psychology that needs to help them to navigate this part where they feel like it's just too much or too anxious, or that they're not ready to commit yet. And once they're past that, then to just keep reminding them of the strategy, the goal that they're aiming towards.
So I think you mentioned earlier, Charlotte, that there are a few things. I mean, there's political things, there's economics, there's like all of these different aspects that are having an impact on our environment. And one probably that has, I don't know if it's right to say the biggest impact, but it does definitely have a significant impact, and that is technology, and the advancement in technology. And we've already spoken about, if somebody doesn't understand it, then it means that they can't make a decision. But also then if I don't understand it, how can I guide somebody to a decision? And I think the worst place to be in is where your client understands, but you don't understand, right? So those are the kind of things that are really, really top of mind for me as I stand here. And I think one of the things I want to ask you about, if we start thinking just a little bit around current trends, I mean, as we're doing this at this point in time in 2024, AI is all the rage. But are there some things that you are seeing from a technology point of view, and from both sides of the coin? So where you see this is going to be the great opportunities that this technological advancements is going to offer, versus some of the risks that we maybe need to consider from that point as well. But let's start off with just maybe some current trends that you think is really the things that we should be paying attention to as financial advisors and planners that will not only impact us, but also our clients?
Okay, so the other technological changes that we're seeing and hearing about, blockchain and cryptocurrency, immediately comes to mind. And there is a lot of opportunity, a lot of places where blockchain can make a lot of sense, but it's kind of like the whole blockchain concept is overwhelmed by the cryptocurrency and the kind of the volatility in that space. So we don't trust the cryptocurrency and we don't quite understand the blockchain. So what are we supposed to do? I think at some point that kind of novelty, there's with any kind of technology or any kind of advancement, there's something called the Gartner hype cycle. And right at the top of this hype cycle, it's like, oh, everybody's excited. It can solve all our problems. And when it doesn't, there's kind of this trough of disillusionment where we go, well, that didn't work. That's obviously useless. I remember somebody telling me off because not everybody has a 3D printer just printing things in their home. What were we futurists talking about? And that is the trough of disillusionment. And then there's kind of like this tail that kind of guides off into the future. And that's where we get over the hype, we get over the excitement, and we find practical ways to make things work. So at some stage, blockchain will do that. Cryptocurrencies and those kind of tokens will do that. We have big data. It's so easy just to talk about big data, but where does it come from? Every time we interact with anything online or we go anywhere with our cell phone, we are adding to this huge pool of big data. But I'm not sure that it's necessarily available in a way that is helpful to to a financial advisor, unless they're kind of plugged into some big multinational financial firm. But to regular people, we don't have that kind of access. But we do have good data. We do have information. And there are reports and trends about how people are looking at their finances, how people are anticipating their retirements, how are people planning their careers over time, especially as they start to age longer. How are they kind of like creating mini retirements or opportunities to go back and study something periodically through their career, as opposed to creating one big retirement plan for the end. That kind of trend and data we should pay attention to, because that's how people are starting to respond to things that are happening. Then obviously we've got artificial intelligence, which is the one that we're all abuzz about right now. And it was about this time last year that ChatGPT started, making a bit of a noise, and we started realizing how what we're experiencing this year, these 12 months about artificial intelligence, is, levels above what we've ever experienced before. And what has happened in the last 12 months has been phenomenal. AI is everywhere. So yes, it does impact our clients. It does impact our work. And one of those ways is that anybody can go online now, any client, and plug in I've got this problem or I've got this goal, what should I do? And there will be either, some version of ChatGPT or some other platform using artificial intelligence, or even everything that the banks, insurance companies kind of plug into their websites, where clients can go and get information, get insights about what they could achieve. And very often they just kind of slip into that little sales funnel on the website and go and buy themselves a retirement annuity or something without really understanding the strategy and the process that a financial advisor can take them through. So that is a challenge. Artificial intelligence offers huge amounts of insight. And my recommendation would be that financial advisors spend some more time playing around on even things like ChatGPT. Just go on and plug in questions and engage in debate and explore and dig down into problems that your clients have or are facing, or potential ways to solve problems to the future. And the insights that come from that, if you're already engaging properly, you don't just ask a simple question and then get a lame answer back. But if you really dig in, you can get some incredible insights about things that you could be adding into how you are helping your clients to create a strategy. So I think that a lot of positives with the technology and the AI. Do you want to look at the negatives?
Yeah, before we do, I just want to sort of ask a bit of a follow-up question, because I think this is, I know, I can see this, that, and you sort of touched on it a little bit, like big data, for example. That's something that's available to big companies and big industries and things like that. But the normal small business owner, even medium-sized business owner, doesn't necessarily have access to those, either because of infrastructure or maybe because of financial resources or expertise, whatever those constraints may be in their business. My question is this, Because ChatGPT changed that. When ChatGPT came last year, or even actually November the year before, but what made it different was that anybody could talk to it, even for free. So you could start playing around with it. But up until then, AI, although it's been around since like many, many years ago, it's the first time that the normal person on the street had access to it. But my question is this. So for a small business, how do I make sure that I gain access to things that are available to me that in my mind is only available to big business? Is it possible?
One of the suggestions I would make, especially if there is, a team or a staff, is to find somebody who's most keen and eager and kind of give them the task of investigating and staying up to date, because it is a rabbit hole that you can go down. One of the platforms I love to go to is something called futuretools.ai, I think, but Future Tools. And on this site, there are all these options. So you're saying, you want a chat AI or a video generating AI or an image AI, and you plug it in, and then you say whether you want, a freemium version or if you want a paid version, and it just gives you like pages and pages and pages of platforms and apps and websites out there that you can actually use to create things. We in my office, we have like 3 or 4 different platforms open while we create an image and we animate something there and we get some more data there and we get, some good marketing copy somewhere else and we pull it out into something eventually that we can publish. So it can become overwhelming. As a futurist, I have to say that I am a late adopter when it comes to technology. I love to see other people play around with it. I keep my ear, and then when we see what's settled and what's still working, that's when I step in and explore it. So I wouldn't want to put pressure on anybody saying you have to keep up to date. You have to, be at the cutting edge. You have to know everything that's happening. You will not be able to keep up. It is more than a full-time job to know what is happening there. And this is, if it's not your job, you don't want to spend that much time doing it. So find places where you can follow, like this podcast, and see what are the things that people are talking about, what makes sense, and what can you explore. So either delegate, this to somebody in the team, or you could do this, because we're talking finance as well, is when my children were little and I taught them about budgeting, I gave them 10 1 Rand coins, and they had like 1 Rand was for charity and 1 Rand was for savings and 1 was for investment, and the rest they could spend. And their little savings and investment plans grew quite rapidly, and they are now really good with this kind of process. But it makes me think that when we're looking at the future, we should be able to invest a little bit of our time into the future. So if we put aside a few hours a day just to go online, to explore, look at a few websites that give you latest information, listen to the podcast that gives you latest information, and play around with something, because that little kind of investment of time every week will add up to you being prepared for the changes that you need to respond to, or at least having a framework in your mind of what is coming so that you're not overwhelmed. That would be really important. Kind of investing into the future, because while you are at that cutting edge, while you are learning about things, you can bring that back to your client. And you're asking your client to do the same thing, to put time and money aside now for investment in the future, so we can do the same thing in terms of learning a little bit about technology and what is coming next.
Hello, just a quick reminder that TechStack Live is coming to you on the 15th of March 2024. TechStack Live is a brand new virtual summit in the world of financial planning, and this completely virtual event is packed with specialist speakers, awesome panel sessions, and our brand new Tech Innovator Awards 2024. And the best part of all, it is completely free to attend. So reset your perspective and stay ahead in the world of financial planning. Secure your spot now at techstacklive.com. We can't wait to see you there.
Charlotte, so let's talk a little bit about then the risks, right? Because I think there's a lot of things that we need to think about when it comes to technology and staying on top of technology. But what are maybe some of the main risks you think that financial planners, specifically those that have their own firms of any size for that matter, that they need to keep top of mind and consider in their journey if they're on a journey of adopting tech?
Technology offers us great opportunities, but technology is just a tool, and anybody can use a tool to create something amazing, or they can use a tool to destroy things. And there are some people who will use tools to destroy things. So we need to obviously keep an eye on any legislation that relates to new technology. So technology kind of pulls us forward and legislation lags behind. And at some point, the laws will change and say you have to do this or something else in terms of whatever technology we're using. So obviously, security of data and privacy is one of the primary issues that we need to pay attention to. And not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because there are some very serious legal consequences for being irresponsible with data, with clients' data and information. So they're practical things. How secure is your website and your network, and who has access to the data? Is it open that anyone in the office can look at it, or is it kept private somehow? So that data is really important. With artificial intelligence, some of the challenges that we're anticipating is that it has already made big adjustments in the working world. So people have been affected. Either people's kind of job scope has been reduced, maybe they're more effective, but for some people that means that they're not fully employed. And there could be another kind of round of adjustments in the office space, in the workplace, and then those people lose their income. So as financial advisors, one of the things we should be looking at is there any way to protect our clients' income if they are replaced by artificial intelligence? It's not your job necessarily to help them maintain, full employment, but having that conversation gets people to be more responsible and aware of what is coming in the future. So yeah, the data, the privacy, having people hack and get into websites and data, that's a very serious concern. And the implications of artificial intelligence and work is also a really big concern.
And I do want to add this, I think when you're a small business, you think installing some kind of an antivirus software package, that's going to do the trick for you. There are so many additional things. I remember when I attended the Microsoft Ignite event at the end of last year, how much emphasis they put on the security protocols and the things that you need to implement. And it's crazy to see just how much control we actually do have over that. So I think that's a very pertinent point that you're touching on, and something we should probably explore deeper in this podcast as well. But such important points. And none of those are actually enough to say, well, those reasons are so big that you shouldn't go down this road, or you should go down this road very slowly, right? But I do want to touch on something just very briefly before I ask you a little bit about the future outlook, Charlotte. You mentioned earlier that you're a late adopter. So although you're a futurist and you sort of also, I know a little bit about you and how much you love this kind of stuff as well, but you are still a late adopter. I think I myself, with most things, are also a little bit of a late adopter, but some things I'm like, this is the thing I need to learn right now. And it's hard to decide, but I guess at the end of the day, go with who you are. Right? Don't push yourself too far out of your comfort zone. Just say, well, look, we need to pay attention to this. We're either going to sit back and see what happens, or we're going to get involved early on. But that's such an important point. But just on that, if I can then sort of lead into the next question, Charlotte. So the future outlook. What do you think is going to happen being a futurist over the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, you like to ask an impossible question. I've just completed a little ebook about future shock to polycrisis. And future shock was a concept coined by Alvin Toffler back in 1970, where he was talking about the pace of change being overwhelming for people. That's 50 odd years ago. I really wonder what Alvin Toffler would think about it if he came back now and saw the pace of change we're dealing with. But this future shock is about pace. The polycrisis is about complexity. And polycrisis is a phrase coined by a historian called Adam Tooze, and he wrote about it just 2 or 3 years ago on his website. And polycrisis means that there are things happening around the world that are difficult or challenging or pose a threat, but the combination of all those things, kind of implies a danger more than just the sum of its parts. So a polycrisis is really huge anxiety about the future. I don't normally want to talk about international politics, so I bring that down to us dealing with the pace and complexity of the world in terms of our personal lives. But if we do want to cast an eye, around the world, there is a lot going on that is almost shocking to us. And I think it's because we have this naive approach to society and to modern world that everything should be a kind of civil. Like there's this veneer of civility around the world. This is how humans behave. And then when COVID happened and we all had to stay home and you had to tell the police why you were leaving your house, and there were all these rules and things that were imposed on us and emergency, processes and laws, it shocked a lot of people because it's like, this is not how civilization is supposed to be. And we keep seeing more and more of those in our social media, sometimes on mainstream news. We're seeing more of these stories, wars, genocides, conflicts, financial things, physical disasters. And it's kind of, they keep coming as a bit of a shock. Like, how could a civil world, a sophisticated world live like this? I don't want to paint this huge negative picture, because when we get negative and scared, we stop thinking creatively. We stop thinking practically. So it is an exercise to sit down and do that worst case scenario, that kind of what is the worst that could happen, and anticipate that, and then work out practically what we can do in response to that. But I do think that the world is coming up, is going to experience many more of these challenges going forward. And from every part of that little pestle driver, every part of the politics, economic, social, legislation, technology, and the environment, every part is presenting challenges, and not all of those challenges are good. And how do we respond? So it's going to be a very interesting, perhaps rough few years as we learn how we can cope with that, and allow ourselves to kind of get past that naivete that the world is just supposed to be nice and pleasant and everything should be working, because that's a fantasy.
Brilliant stuff. Charlotte, so where can people get hold of your latest book?
The book, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to connect. And I'm just Charlotte Kemp, Futures Alchemist on LinkedIn. You'll find that. The book is available on Amazon. It's a short read. I don't want to give people homework to go and study more stuff, but it does help us just to paint a picture of what's happening and how we can move through those stages to a place where we can thrive even with all that conflict. And then, of course, I've got a website under my name, Charlotte Kemp, and also under Futures Alchemist.
Fantastic. We will also make all of that available in the show notes. But Charlotte, on behalf of NextGen Planners and the TechStack Podcast, thank you very much for your time. Your great insights. Really enjoyed talking to you today.
Thank you so much, Francois. I really enjoyed it myself.
So thank you very much to Charlotte Kemp, the Futures Alchemist, on being on the NextGen Planners TechStack Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can share it on all social media platforms, and you can listen to past and future episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast, as well as on our website, which is nextgenplanners.co.uk. On our website, you can find loads more information about our fantastic community. And finally, if you can leave us a review. It really does help to grow the podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the TechStack Podcast, brought to you by the NextGen Planners Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this conversation and took away some useful nuggets of information. To hear more episodes, please be sure to subscribe, and don't forget to leave us a review. For more information about NextGen Planners and our tech stack, head to nextgenplanners.co.uk/tech-stack. See you soon.